Hello, my name's Nicola. Welcome to this special episode of Bumble Stitches. Rather than a regular podcast, this is my Make 9 2019 special, and I'm going to have a little chat about the projects that I've selected for the Make 9 challenge for this year, and hopefully you'll find that interesting. I've got some yarn to show you and obviously the patterns that I'm going to be knitting. If you don't know, the Make 9 challenge is, I think, primarily an Instagram challenge where makers of all types, knitters, dressmakers and crocheters and all kinds of makers select 9 patterns or things that they would like to make for the upcoming year, hence the hashtag here, Make 9 2019. So if you're not following that hashtag on Instagram or you wanted to start your own, that's a really good place to have a little look. Now, most of the projects that I have selected for my Make 9 for 2019 are not very new patterns. They're patterns that have been around for a little while. So you're probably very familiar with lots of them, and most of them I bought the patterns and the yarn quite a while ago, and they just sat in stash and not been knitted. So I thought it was a really good opportunity to commit to making those items in the coming year and hopefully have 9 lovely projects by the end of 2019. So I'm going to read out the patterns that I've chosen first of all, to make sure I don't miss any, and then I'm going to show you the patterns themselves. I have most of them printed and ready to go. I've already actually started one of the projects, which is quite exciting, and I have most of the yarn here to show you as well, and that's why this little cubby here is a bit depleted, because that was housing most of the yarn that I have put to one side for these projects. So I'll just read from my list. So the first on my list is Boho Blush, which is a shawl by Andrea Mowry. Lots of these are repeat designers, so it's easy to see who my favourites are. The next is Birds of a Feather shawl by Andrea Mowry as well. The third is Find Your Fade, another shawl designed by Andrea Mowry. That's followed by Timely, which is a cardigan pattern by Libby Johnson. Followed by Zweig, a sweater by Caitlin Hunter. Another Caitlin Hunter is next on the list, and that's the Little Cabin sweater. A cardigan after that, which is Like a Cloud by Joji Locatelli. Another Joji pattern, which is a shawl pattern called Inner Peace. And finally, the Ambient Sweater by Eri. And they're in no particular order, it's just how I happen to put the photo of the 9 that I'd selected on my Instagram grid. And I'm not knitting them in any particular order, nor are they in order of sort of favourites or anything like that. It's just completely random. So I will start to go through those for you now. You have to forgive, the lighting seems to be reflecting on my glasses a little bit, so I hope that isn't too distracting for you all. Okay. Right, so Boho Blush was first. And this is a lovely pattern by Andrea Mowry. And what particularly drew me to this pattern was the lovely fringing, which I think is really, really pretty. I've seen lots of completed Boho Blush shawls, and I think they all look absolutely stunning. So it's been on my wish list for a long, long time. And the pattern, I don't know if there is a slightly clearer photograph. I'll just double check inside for you to see. There isn't. I don't know if you can see if I hold it a bit closer. There's some brioche within the pattern, and also some lace, simple lace, which is just like the sort of feather and fan lace knitting stitch. And the yarn that I've chosen for this particular project is yarn that I picked up at the Fibre East Festival last July 2018, and this is yarn that I picked up from my lovely friend Polly at Paper Stories UK. It's been washed out a little bit. It's a very, very soft blush pinky peachy colour. Yeah, that's probably about right. And the yarn itself is 100% lamb's wool, 4-ply, 100 grams, 420 meters, and it's, I want to say it's quite a sort of crunchy yarn almost. it's 100% lamb's wool. And when I bought this, Polly explained this is kind of like some of the I think it's Garn Studios yarn. It's that kind of yarn that's been treated with, or still has the spinning oil within it from the manufacturing, from the spinning process. But when it's actually soaked and blocked, it does bloom and plump up really, really nicely. And the pattern does call for 3 skeins of yarn, so I thought it would be absolutely perfect. So these gorgeous skeins will become my Boho Blush as part of my Make 9. So it'd be really nice to actually finally get those on the needles and get a lovely Boho Blush out of it. And it's definitely that fringe that I'm most looking forward to making and wearing. Right, I need to do some yarn and pattern management here to make sure I don't get covered in skeins of yarn. So I'm just going to pop this to one side. Okay, so next on the list, I've lost my list now, not very professional today. Next on the list is the Birds of a Feather shawl. Again, it's another Andrea Mowry shawl. And if you have been watching the podcast for a while, or you follow me on Ravelry or Instagram, you may have noticed that I have knitted this pattern before. I used some beautiful yarn from Fine Fish Yarns and knitted the Birds of a Feather probably almost a year ago, I would say, or certainly back in the spring. And when it was completed, I did absolutely love it. I was thrilled with how it turned out. But my mum also loved it, and I decided that it would be really nice to give that to her as a gift. I think I gave it to her for Mother's Day. So I don't have one, and I like it so much, I just feel the need to make another. So I will show you the pattern. And although it's a pattern on Ravelry now, I did originally get it from the Liner magazine. And this is issue 2, which was out in spring and summer 2017. But as I mentioned, it is available as a separate pattern or a single pattern in its own right on Ravelry now. And I'll just take that out of there. So as you can see, you're probably all familiar with this shawl anyway. It's the Birds of a Feather by Andrea Mowry. And it is worked in 2 yarns, so a fingering weight yarn and a mohair, and they are sort of striped alternately in blocks. And the fingering weight yarn is in garter stitch, and I think there is some, yeah, there is some sort of feather and fan lace in there. I don't know if you can, if that's coming up, so you can see here. And then there are mohair sections in between, and the finished result is such a pretty shawl, really, really lovely. So the yarn that I've selected for this was from Antonella at Cozy Posy Yarn Company. And if you haven't checked out Antonella's yarn, I really encourage you to do so, because her yarn and her colourways are absolutely stunning. So I have got, the pattern calls for 2 skeins, 2 sort of standard 100-gram fingering weight skeins of yarn, and 1 of mohair. So I have got the mohair there, and this is in, I believe it's Rose Quartz is the colourway, and also I've got 2 skeins of the Rose Quartz there for the fingering weight. And I'll just tell you the blend of yarn. It's an 85% superwash merino, 15% nylon. So as you can imagine, because it's 85% merino, it's super, super squishy, really plump. And I think these colours are going to make a really lovely Birds of a Feather shawl. So you'll probably start to spot a bit of a pattern in my colour choices as I go through some of these Make 9s, particularly the shawls. So that will be my second of my Make 9s. And as you can see, I've got quite a lot of knitting ahead of me. So I just pop those down on top of the Boho Blush. Thirdly is the final pattern from Andrea Mowry for my Make 9, and that is the Find Your Fade shawl. Now that has been a phenomenal success, and that was really what started the whole fade phenomena a couple of years back. And I know that lots and lots, thousands of people have knitted it, and it's a really popular pattern. It's a huge shawl. I think some of people had said once they blocked theirs, they were sort of verging on sort of over 6 feet long. So it's a huge amount of knitting to undertake, but it is beautiful, and I think it's the colour transitions that really sort of spur you on. I've got a pattern here to show you. I'm sure nobody needs to be reminded of what the Find Your Fade looks like. But there it is there, all ready to go. And I have had this pattern ready for goodness knows how long. So it will be nice to finally make a start on it. And I have got some yarn that I purchased from Amy of the Little Tailoress. And again, it was about March 2016, I think, ish, round about then. It was quite a while ago. It might have been 2017, but it was a long time ago that I bought this yarn as a kit for the Find Your Fade shawl. And the reason I bought this kit from Amy is because she had knitted this herself. She'd knitted a Find Your Fade, and the colour choices that she'd chosen were so beautiful. I just wanted mine to be exactly like hers. So when she started dyeing up kits, I snapped one up because I just thought it was too pretty not to. So you can see there's quite a lot of yarn here. I think the original pattern calls for 7 skeins of yarn. That transition from a fade, from one, from colourway through to colourway until you've got 7 different transitions. I believe I haven't read through the pattern. But what Amy has cleverly done is, because some of the sections aren't a full skein of yarn, some obviously are quite big sections of colour, but she has combined full skeins with some smaller skeins as well. So I will endeavour not to drop these while I show you. So of the full skeins that I have, I don't think any of these have got colourways on them. Let me just check. No, they don't. So we have a plain peach here, and that is followed by a peach with some green speckles, which is really pretty. I'm not going to be able to hold these all up at the same time because it will just go disastrously wrong. Then to a peach with blue, and then to this almost like a soft mustardy colour. And then there is another blue, green and grey there. And then I'll pop those down while I just show you the smaller skeins. And there are 3 of these 3 here, and I think these are, they look like they're probably 50 gram skeins, and these do have colourways. This is Late Summer Picnic. This one here is Golden Pippin, super pretty with such delicate speckling on it. And this final one here is The Last Runaway. So all absolutely gorgeous, and I think combined they are going to make, well, I know they're going to make a lovely fade because they will be the same colour combinations that Amy used in hers. So I just need to remind myself what order they go in, and I'm really looking forward to getting that one on the needles finally, because it has been languishing in stash for a very, very, very long time. So that is my 3rd of my make 9. Okay, the next pattern after that, I hope I'm not going too quickly and there's not too much rustling of paper. The next of my make 9 is the Timely Cardigan by Libby Johnson of Truly Myrtle. And I love this cardie. I really like the shape of it, I like the simplicity of it, and I do like a stripe. So I think it's absolutely perfect. And again, this has been knitted many, many times. I've seen lots of these on Ravelry and on Instagram, and it's something that I've always wanted to knit. Now, when I was at Unravel, which is a yarn festival in Surrey, I was there last February, and Amy from Stranded Dye Works was selling Timely kits. So I snapped one of those up and put it in stash and forgot all about it. So I'll show you that yarn now. And there's a bit of a story with this yarn. I originally bought the Timely kit, which comprised 2 skeins of the Shiner colourway, which is this one here, and all the yarns are 75-25 superwash merino and nylon, and 2 skeins of the Heliograph, which is this one here, and you can see how beautifully they blend, and striped in that design will be completely stunning. And obviously not my creativity at all, these were kits put together by Amy. So those are the yarns that I'm going to be using. Now, in the meantime of me buying this Unravel, I decided I might like to knit the Sashui Shrug by Suzanne Summer, and I was going to use this yarn, this kit, to make that shrug. Well, that didn't end well. I failed in actually getting the thing cast on properly and decided not to stress myself out over it and to go back to plan A, which was to knit the Timely cardigan with it. So I have these two skeins which are still intact, and a couple of pre-caked skeins which was intended for the shrug that never was. So those will be my yarns for the Timely cardigan. So far 3 shawls and 1 garment, but we are going to change that now because we are heading into garment territory. And the next one on the list is Zweig by Caitlin Hunter. And again, so many of these are around on Ravelry and on Instagram. It's been a phenomenally popular design, and it's easy to see why. It's such a lovely sweater with the yoke in the contrasting colour with the lace work. It's just a really, really lovely design. So I bought the yarn for Zweig back last summer when I was on a visit to Brighton, and I popped into Yak and bought some lovely Olan yarn. So I'll show you the colourways that I have got for that. And for my size, I had to buy 5, can't quite grab it. I had to buy 5 skeins of the darker colour for the body, and this is my contrast here. So let's show you that in a little bit more detail, a bit closer up. So this is all Olan sock, and this particular colourway is Gunpowder. So it's Sock Light is the yarn. It's 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon. So a bit like the Cozy Posy yarn, it's the same blend. So it's nice and squishy. You can see there's a lot of tonality in this yarn. Really, really lovely. And I think for the body of the sweater, it's going to work really well, because on the Zweig there is a textured stitch to the main body, which some people have chosen to knit and some people have left out. So I think I will probably go for it though, because I think in this yarn particularly that will work really, really well. So that's for the main body. And then the contrast, which I have got, is again the Sock Light, and this is called Slow Motion. And you can see the amount of colours that are in this skein. There's pretty much everything represented here, but mostly the fuchsias and purples and lilacs and the greys and blues and greens, teals. It's all going on in there, even a bit of mustard. But I just think that these together will make a really lovely contrast and work really, really well together. I did have a few reservations as to whether this colourway would be the best for showing off the lace design on the yoke, but I'm going to go with it anyway, because it's quite a deep border of yoke, or it's quite a substantial section. I think if it had been a small section in that colourway, it might not have worked, but I think with there being so much going on and it being a complete sort of all the way around yoke, I think it will work quite well. So those will be my yarns for the Zweig sweater by Caitlin Hunter, and that's Boyle and Knitworks. I hope you're all keeping up. It seems like such a lot of knitting. I can't believe that you're going to get all these projects done in 2019. But I think by making a start now, which I have done, and I'll show you the project that I've already started in a moment, I think it could well happen. So I just need to keep my knitting game strong, and I should be able to get these projects done. Okay, so after Zweig is the Little Cabin sweater by Caitlin Hunter. Now I don't have this is one of the few out of my Make 9 that I don't have yarn for. I think there's 2 patterns I don't have all of the yarn for. And I also don't have I haven't purchased the pattern yet. So I'll insert a photograph here for you. So as you can see, it's a lovely design, all in one colour, or certainly in the pattern photograph, all in one colour. It's a DK weight, and it is heavily bobbled, and I think it's a really lovely design. I think the bobbles might get a little bit tedious in the knitting after a while, but I think it will be worth it. And I haven't actually decided on yarn for that sweater yet, so I will be keeping an eye out at upcoming festivals for some DK that will be suitable for the little cabin sweater. Okay, the next is the Like a Cloud cardigan by Boho Blush, and I have seen this obviously on Ravelry and on Instagram, but I've also seen quite a few in real life that friends have knitted, and it is a beautiful cardigan, a long line cardigan. Again, I don't have the pattern printed, so I'll pop a photograph in here for you. And you can see it's a long edge-to-edge cardigan with a simple textured stitch pattern throughout, and that is knitted, I believe the pattern might have been knitted in 2 strands, with a strand of mohair yarn and a strand of fingering weight. So I have got some yarn ready. Well, I've got 50% of the yarn ready, which I'm going to show you now. And the yarn that I have is from the Wool Barn, and it's a stunning blend of, I think it's got everything luxurious in this blend. It is 50% silk, 50% baby camel, and it is quite a fine fingering weight because there are 100 grams and there's 533 meters on these skeins, and it's called Camel Silk 4-ply in the golden colourway. This yarn has been around the block. I bought this initially way back, well over a year ago, to knit Hohi's Boxy and Buttony, Buttony and Boxy sweater. I always get the one the wrong way round, but I bought it to knit that. It's a bit like the Boxy sweater basically, but it has a button detail on the arms. And I started knitting it, and it just wasn't doing it for me, so I abandoned that, popped the yarn back in stash, and then last year, sort of middle of last year, I started knitting the Tenya by Caitlin Hunter, and that was one of the items that I featured on the podcast that was going to the frog pond, and I did indeed frog that. I frogged it actually while I was at the country house retreat, and it felt good because as much as I like the Tenya as a design, it wasn't working in this yarn really well. I didn't think it was going to be particularly flattering, and I just decided to frog it. So I have a couple of skeins that are like this. I have a couple of skeins from the frogged Tenya ready to go, and I think this weight of yarn held double with a mohair will be absolutely perfect for Like a Cloud. So the plan is to combine this with some mohair, and I've seen some mohair that I like. I haven't bought it yet, but it's a sort of like a rosy pink, and I think combined with this it should hopefully give like a rose gold effect. And I think this luxurious blend of camel and silk with the mohair will be literally Like a Cloud. Well, that's the plan anyway. So that will be the next of my Make 9. Right, after that we are now up to the actual work in progress part of the Make 9. If I just reach down here, just living in my fringe field bag, I have got the next of my projects, and this is another Boho Blush design, and it's a shawl called Inner Peace, and I thought it was a really nice design to start the new year off. I like the sentiment, Inner Peace. It seems like it's going to be a nice calming knit, and it is. I'm really enjoying it, and you can see it's a shawl that involves lots of bubbles all along the edge, and I think it's absolutely stunning. I'll just see if there's a photograph of it where you can see it held out a bit more. Excuse the rustling. There's just one here at the back which I shall show you. So you can see it's a quite shallow shawl, but it's shaped, it's sort of knitted in sections, and the bobble stitch feature goes all the way along the edging. So really lovely pattern. And this particular pattern calls for, it is a one skein project, but it does call for a large skein of yarn. So it uses, I think it's about 150 grams of yarn. Yeah, she does recommend 150 gram skein. So it was actually really handy, because when I went to festival back in November, I visited Hey J, and she is an indie designer. I'm trying to find the band of the yarn so I can show you, which I don't think I've got in my project bag. No, I don't. And I bought this skein of yarn from there, which is one of her plus size skeins. So it's 150 grams, and I think it gives about, best part of about 600 meters. So it's a huge skein of yarn. I fell in love with the colour. It's a blend of 50% silk and 50% merino, which is the same blend that the pattern, the original yarn used in the pattern calls for. So I thought it was absolutely perfect for this design. The colour as well is, I don't know if you've seen the new Pantone colour for 2019, which is Living Coral, and I think it's a pretty good, whoops, I think it's a pretty good coral colour too. So it seemed so utterly perfect as a New Year's cast on. I actually cast this on New Year's Day. So I haven't made a huge amount of progress because I've been trying to get working on my whips as well. But I'll show you where I'm up to. And you can see the bobbles are being worked along this section here. So that will be the bottom part of the shawl. And I'm really enjoying knitting this. I like the tonality of the yarn. I think it's going to be really nice and drapey when it's blocked. Some short row shaping, garter, some twisted rib and bobbles. It's a really lovely pattern. If you've not seen it, I don't know how long the pattern's been about. It's certainly new to me, but it's definitely worth a look if you want something, if you like your shawls that aren't too deep, and you've got that sort of quantity of yarn, a nice big skein or 2 skeins of yarn, it will make an absolutely perfect version of inner piece. So it's nice to have actually got started on my Make 9 as well, especially right at the beginning of the year. I felt if I didn't actually make a start that it would be really difficult to keep up with everything, especially as new things sort of inevitably will creep into my my knitting queue as the year progresses. So the final item that I have on my list is the Ambient Sweater, which is by Eri, and I don't have the pattern printed out, so once again I will pop a photograph of the pattern in here for you. And this Ambient Sweater is actually something that I saw at Fibre East last summer on Fine Fish Yarn stand. Terry had a sample made up of the Ambient Sweater. It was on her stand and she was selling kits of yarn to make it, and it was such a lovely design, very simple as you can see from the image that I showed you, but really effective. And of course anything with mohair just really grabs you at the moment. It's so sort of on trend, as it were. So let's show you the yarn that I have for that. And okay, so I did buy the kit, as I mentioned, at Unravel, and this is the base colour that I have here, and this is called Fink, F-I-N-K, and so I've got 3 skeins of that. I'm hoping it's going to be enough, and this is all merino singles. It's got some very subtle colouring going on here, almost like inside of a shell, sort of like that mother of pearl sort of reminds me of. So that's the main colour, and then the yoke section is held with mohair, and I've gone for a bit of a contrast here, and this is called Nocturne Alley, and this is Terry's mohair silk, 420 meters to do the yoke. And obviously mohair, I understand, does take the dye quite well, it does saturate, but with it being such fine strands, once it's knitted in with the base colour, I think it will be very much more muted and blend really well, and it'll be almost the complete opposite of the Zweig sweater. So I'll have a neutral base with a dark yoke, or a darker yoke, in comparison to the Vibe, which is dark with a lighter yoke. So I'm hoping that's going to work really, really well. I'm looking forward to knitting that one. I did make a little bit of a boo-boo. When I picked the kit up for this, I'm in an erring whether I was going to buy the kit or not. And I picked a kit up and then put it down again, looked at the sample a bit more, and then decided I did want to buy the kit. And the kit that I picked up was on singles, but the kit that I had originally had in my hand was actually just on a traditional sock fingering weight yarn. So I've heard mixed reviews about garments knitted in singles, so I'm hoping it's going to be okay. I'm also hoping that I will have enough to knit my size, because I thought I had the ordinary sock yarn in my kit. I picked up an extra skein of the sock yarn in the same colourway so that I would have enough. So I'd have 4 skeins of the base colour and the mohair. But then when I got home, I realised I had 3 skeins of merino singles and 1 skein of the sock weight. So, but there you go, you live and you learn. So hopefully I will have enough. If not, I could always see if Terry's got any more. And I'm sure the singles will be fine. It might peel a little bit more, but I'm sure if, you know, if I pay attention and don't split the yarn as I'm trying to knit it, I'm sure it will be absolutely fine. So as you can see, I have got an awful lot of yarn to work through. I've got some lovely patterns. I've got a nice mixture of shawls, sweaters, a couple of cardigans, and I'm really, really looking forward to sharing those with you on the regular podcast as I make my way through them during this year. So that's about it for this Make 9 2019 episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll look forward to seeing you back on the main Bumble Stitches podcast very, very soon. Happy knitting. Bye.